Hey everybody, how are you today? Thanks for joining me on my channel, and today we're going to do something a little bit slower paced, and we are going to create some landscape Polaroids, and they can be any kind of background that you like, anything that inspires you from a trip or a memory, or even follow along with me and have some fun. And you can do this with anything, so be creative. You can grab yourself some watercolor paints, you can grab yourself some crayons or some colored pencils. It doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain my process and a bit about what I'm playing with today and how things can progress, and that you can just lift your mood doing something that's a little bit different than your usual, a little bit of fun, a little bit of not worrying or planning or stressing out, and just enjoying the moment, creating something that gives you a little bit of hope and inspiration and makes you feel better. So you can see I've pulled out some of the things I'm going to play with today, and what I'll do is I'll go through the process, and some parts I will speed up, or else this would be a 2-hour long video. And I'm just going to explain to you a little bit about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it so that you can follow along at home. Alrighty, so if you are painting, the one thing I really do recommend is some really nice watercolor paper. It's a bit of an indulgence, but you know what? It's really worth it, because you do end up with something that's not going to buckle. It feels good in the hand, it holds the color nicely, and you won't be disappointed. But if you're just doing this for fun and giggles and playing, it doesn't matter at all, because it's just for fun. Okay, so you're gonna have your nice watercolor paper and some paints, and then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna tape this down so that when we are using a lot of water, which this process will, your paper is going to stay put, first of all, but also it's not going to get buckly and rolly. And sometimes that's an effect you like, but sometimes it's not. So let's tape this down and we'll get that started. And so you can see I'm just taping this down, and I wanted to just show you this in real time so you can see how I'm doing it, because it's pretty basic, but sometimes it looks more complex than it is. This is just dollar store painter's tape. And the reason I chose this is because it has enough adhesive on the back that it sticks to the paper, but yet not so much that when you go to pull it off, it rips your paper. So try and find something that's kind of medium tack. That's the best way to go. And then just before you're ready to paint, you're going to want to just slightly rub over it. You can see I'm doing that right there, just to make sure that where it's touching the paper, that the edges are nice and secure so that the paint doesn't seep underneath. Okay, now we're going to get started, and this is going to be a wet on wet technique. So what I'm doing is I'm starting by just wetting the paper down and then adding a bit of pigment. And you can use a palette and pre-mix your colors. I like to just paint directly from my paint box because I love the colors that I have. And then I put it down, and I find that if it's too strong, I can add some water as I go along. Or what you saw me do there is I'm just taking the excess water out of the brush and then lightly rubbing over the paper, and that's lifting off any excess pigment that I don't want. So this is really up to you how you want to do your colors, if you want to have them really dark and intense, or if you want to have them a bit lighter. But the wonderful thing about wet on wet is you can see how the colors are starting to bleed into each other naturally. Do you see that? And you're getting a kind of an ombre effect, which is very similar to what you're going to see in a sunset. So this is just playing around, manipulating the water and the paint a little bit until I get something that makes me happy. Now, of course, one of the joys of watercolor is that you cannot predict it. So really, it's just play. That's why I started watercolors in the first place. If you haven't heard my story, I think I have a video on here somewhere where I talked about that, going from doing very photorealistic acrylic paintings to watercolor, simply because I wanted to learn how to let go and not control every aspect of the process. And so that's really what's going on here. So for you, when you're doing this, have fun. Know that what you start out with, what you're looking at here, is going to be different than when it dries. And really, it's just about letting the colors play together. Different colors, different pigments will interact differently. Some are very soft, some are harsher. And here I am being impatient I have the impatience, so I'm drying this up just so that you can see it. And then we're going to go back into the next layer now that that's dry. And so what I've done is I've created a skyline, and then the bottom is going to be sort of a like a lake with a reflection. And so I'm imitating some of the similar colors that are in the sky as if it was looking into the water. Now you don't have to do this, you can use whatever colors you want. But again, it is just a matter of playing and seeing what the pigments want to do with the water and how they interact with each other. Okay, now we're gonna do a bit of a skyline. And so I've chosen a bit of a blue-gray color. It's called Payne's Gray, and I love this because it's got a lot of blue undertones, so it looks dark and charcoaly, but it has that richness of color, so it's a really nice one to invest in. And I'm just sketching out, you know, sort of a basic skyline. I live in an area where we have lots of islands and mountainy hills, and so, you know, this is just something I'm seeing in my mind's eye. And then I'm going along the base of this with some water, and so what's going to happen is the pigment from the area that has more saturated pigment is going to slowly seep into the water, and it gives this beautiful effect of the coastline and then sort of the reflection in the water. And you can see that it's, you know, it's sort of going all over the place, and that's okay because again, this is just playing. And I'm going to come in here a little bit back and forth. I advise you to do the same. Don't be stressed out about getting it perfect the first time. And, you know, really just play. Add some pigment, take some away. Again, I'm using the technique where I will squeeze the excess water out of my brush and then just lift up any pigment that I don't like and begin to put more water. Now, what I'm also doing here is putting in some more of this beautiful blue-violet. The two of them together make a really nice color, and you can see how the violet pigment is really pushing that Payne's Gray black charcoal color around. And so the two start to interact, and then I'm just going to go back and forth. I actually find this process really meditative, so I think I'll just put some music on and let you enjoy, and I'll catch you at the next step. And so as I'm playing along, just sort of, you know, working on the different areas, I also added a little bit of gold and pink just at the very bottom to give you sort of the idea that you are looking at the sunset and the reflection on the water there. And so we're allowing this to just play and interact and merge together, and you can see that the colors are starting to come up, and as the layers are drying, we can go over top of it again. And now that it is dry, I'm adding a shoreline, and it's as simple as putting a darker line and then going back in with a bit of a wet brush, going over top of it, and it creates the illusion of trees on the shoreline and a beach, just the way that the water interacts with the pigment there. And so again, something to play with. You know, you might like that effect, you might not. You might want to add a little bit extra on the bottom like I am, that sort of makes it look like trees in the distance. Really, it's just about playing, and that's the whole point of this today, is just to have a little bit of fun and some playtime. And you can see at the bottom that there are parts that have already begun to dry, and that's great because what that will do is it will allow you to go over top and give it more texture and play with some colors. But I think I'm pretty happy with this. So guess what? It's time for everybody's favorite part of a painting video, and that's the tape removal process. So turn up your volume and here we go. Ta-da! Don't they look great when they have a white edge like that? Okay, there's just one step left, and that is to think of your favorite saying, or maybe jotting down the place and the date of your memory and having it like a little keepsake. So for me, what I really liked was the concept of just breathe. Ah, nice relaxing moment. And I think I'm going to put this in my office space as a little prompt. So sometimes if I get too stressed out, I can look at that and just take a moment and enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this today, and maybe it inspired you to pull out some art supplies or even just a pen and paper and play around a little bit and enjoy the moment. It's a nice way to lift your mood and really shift the energy when you're having a hard time. So thanks for joining. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to let more people see this content. And I will catch you guys next time. Bye.